Olabuswi Asalu is setting to climb Mount Kilimanjaro to raise awareness about violent crime in South Africa. He's joining me on Skype now. Olabuswi, tell me about the motivations you had to climb up Mount Kilimanjaro.
My motivation is because I have a belief that we shouldn't be passerbys, we shouldn't be spectators in any environment. We should identify things that confront the society and see a way that we act against it. Those are things that I call giants in the land. You don't necessarily need to fight them with missiles, with guns, particularly if it's something that has to do with the mind. You can use simple things, the things that naturally to slay a giant. And for me as a person, I believe I have physical endurance, and I see that violence is something that is really eating into our society. I've spoken with a couple of people that I got worried, I think in 2007, when, I don't know if you remember that historian David Rattray, he was shot at his home in April, and later that year, Lucky Dube was shot in October. I begin to worry that if we are a society that kills our heroes, then if a society kills its heroes, it can kill anybody. You have stories about people who kill just for 5 rand, people who kill for just cell phones. Now, these are things that point to a deeper disregard for dignity, for human life. So I sat down and I said, no, we need to create awareness about it. We need to start talking about it. I also believe that the people generally would tend to behave, gravitate towards something that is presented before them. I believe that you're not doing enough to talk about violence and the dangers of it. You will either see an advert on TV. I've been in this country for 14 years. I've never seen an advert or a radio program or a billboard that talks about, acting in violence. So I believe it is time that we pick up this discussion and start talking about, how do we address the violence in the society.
Now, I think a lot of people would ask, how are you going to raise awareness about violence and violent crime in South Africa by climbing up a mountain?
For example, I'm talking to you now because I came up with an initiative. So just with you now, it's one of that I'm speaking with. A lot of people are calling, a lot of people are visiting our website, a lot of people are phoning the office to find out what do we do, what are the things that we can do. And the primary thing for us is that you need to put it in the face of the people. We need to start talking about it. You also see on Twitter, we've got a lot of people following us now. So the awareness, it may take some time. Ultimately, if you look at other societies have dealt with it, it's a moral offense. It's something that talks to the mind. It can be corrected by education. So we first need to start talking about it, the first stage about it, that we first identify that we have a challenge. And then the next thing we start looking at, how do we come out of it? But if we don't sit down and agree that there is something that we really need to deal with, we will never get there.
Why do you think that South Africans aren't speaking about violence as much as they should?
You see, I read the report of the Council for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation. That research they did, the government gave them the project, I think it was in 2008, to actually do. They came up with brilliant ideas in terms of investigating why are we violent, number one, and they came up with suggestions on how to deal with it. I think the key thing that touched me there is that contesting the culture of violence. But the question I'm asking myself is that since that report came out, why have we not acted on it? That is the question I'm asking everybody too. That we have this wonderful report conducted by an entity that was set up by the government, but how are we acting on these things? Strangely, we're not talking about it. You hear every day, husband killed the wife killed an 80-year-old, 100 years old, killed in an hijack. You hear about parents abusing their children. Somehow it's happening everywhere, but nobody's talking about it. It's so strange. So I really don't have an answer to that, but that's the question I'm asking, that why are we not talking about it? But what to understand from that report is that we have made a mistake of normalizing it. We seem to have accepted it as something that is normal in the society, and we don't want to do anything about it.
Now, in your opinion, what needs to change in South African society so that violent crime isn't as normalized as you were just explaining?
For me, the first step, according to that report, we need to contest the culture. How do you contest the culture? We need to first agree that it is not normal. Violence is not normal. So until we come to the point where we all agree that violence is not normal, you can express yourself, you can communicate, you can do, we act not necessarily being violence. We can reach out to each other without being, we can even settle arguments without being violent. So until we all agree that violence is not normal, and then we can take against it. But if we sit at a place where we accept it as a norm in the society, we will never fight against it. So the first is that let's go back to that report and see that, is it really normal? It is not normal. And then we can start with media, with internet, with billboards, radio adverts, everything, making us see that. You see, I always say something, one of my popular tweets now is that if people gradually gravitate towards the picture that is presented towards them. If you link it back also to what Mandela said, that the greatest tool you can use to change any society is education. We need to be educated about violence, the ills of it, and how to deal with it.
Have you experienced violence in your own life?
No, I have not. I've been asked that question over and over again, and my answer is that I don't want to wait until I experience it before I act against it. You see, we're also in a society where people assume that it is happening there, outside there, it will never come to me. Personally, I've not experienced it, but I have people, every one of us, have people close to us who have experienced it in one way or the other. So we don't necessarily need to wait until it happens to us before we now see that, okay, this is actually real in our society, and then we start. So I don't think we should wait until it affects us directly before we act against it.
Now, what kind of reaction have you had to this campaign, speaking out against a violent crime? Have you seen any change in the mindset of the people you're speaking to?
Yes. You see, we started this campaign in 2009, and then we went to a few schools. Then I didn't have a lot of resources then, but the little way we could do, we targeted Pumalanga there. We went to a few schools and we spoke to young children. We spoke to a couple of people. We went to schools, and then some of them I still have contact with them today. Right, I still phone to ask of, okay, we're faced with this situation, we're faced with this condition, how do you deal with it, how do you deal with that, right? So it is, you see, when you start enlightening people, the human mind will receive the teaching, because violence also, we're not born to be violent. Violence came as a result of certain things we were exposed to. We're all born the same way. Nobody was born violent. It's as a result of certain exposure. So if you start giving the person a different exposure, because we're biological creatures, we will gradually change also. So it's not a permanent state. So you just need to present it, and people will start reasoning with it and acting differently. So I've seen a couple of people who have restrained themselves in different ways, where they could have acted violently. They remember that, you know what, I have control over myself. I don't need to act violently. I can communicate without being violent. We can settle this cause without necessarily being violent.